right, everybody, welcome back to the Value Script podcast, where we bring value every episode for the everyday person with an emphasis on helping you make your mind, your body, your soul, and your empire thrive. Today we have part 2, Dr. Brendan McCarthy from Protea Medical Center. Welcome to the show, Dr. McCarthy.
Thank you.
So how did you obtain your passion for doing what you do clinically?
Women, I don't know why. I trained under an environmental medicine specialist. I thought I was going to become, practice environmental medicine, environmental toxicology, like people exposed to DDT or lead poisoning or arsenic. That's what I was very passionate about. And I did a fellowship with a guy, Walter Krinian. He's one of my mentors. And that's where I was going. And we had a case of a woman coming in. We thought she had mercury poisoning because her labs showed it, but she was not right. It was bad. And mercury was cleared. She should be better, but she wasn't. And so I started really exploring what else could be. And the very first patient I ever did this, and this was in med school, and Walter gave me full free reign to figure this out, and it was progesterone. And I remember giving this woman progesterone, and I remember it being like night and day. And I was like, what is this?
And it was originally mercury?
I thought it was mercury. It wasn't.
Gotcha.
It was progesterone deficiency. Women, when they don't have progesterone, it's just their brain was made for it. And so without progesterone, anxiety, depression, insomnia, and it's unfair. And, PMS is, we joke around about it and stuff, but and women are conditioned to believe that they should accept it. But treating that, seeing that before and after, it's just humbling to see something that's that easy, that simple, that safe, have that benefit. And that really started the whole process in the practice. That really is the cornerstone of everything we do. Is I want to get that brain better. I want to see people healthier. And if there's something I could do with lab work and then just with simple therapies like medicine or diet, whatever I can do, I will. Yeah. But I'm so passionate about that part. That's where it all started. And then it expands out to men too, because men, talk about anxiety in men. It's not all serotonin, buddy. People, they condition us to believe that. And now the research is coming out that they now know it's not all serotonin depression. These SSRIs, serotonin reuptake inhibitors, they're finally saying, all right, yeah, it's not all SSRIs causing depression. Just like we know Alzheimer's is not all.
That's what I take.
So SSRIs, that's not the primary always the thing. And so, hormones play a role in there. Not 100% all the time, but what does it do with you? Lab work, figure you out.
Well, and can foods play a role in that as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. Deep.
Because you were talking about some foods get processed by certain individuals into more excitatory neurotransmitters than others. And I think you said, gluten is primarily one of those that is involved there. But that's one thing. My anxiety is better. I've had anxiety I didn't realize that's what it was either for a large part of my life.
We think that's what women have. We don't have anxiety. You were like, I know that feeling.
I'm an anxiety monster.
Yeah.
And I didn't, but I do feel, now that I'm healthier, I do feel better. I still get it, but and really what helped me manage that the most was meditation and doing cold showers.
Yeah.
That's one of the, getting and simulating that fight or flight response and helping me snap back into my thinking brain, rather than being in my emotional brain helps me a lot. So, but that's really interesting. Hey, I gotta ask, how did you and Celeste meet? Wasn't that when you're up in the Seattle, this Pacific Northwest area? Yeah. I just remember seeing this picture of you two, I don't know how many years ago in Pike's Market.
It's 23 years ago.
It was adorable.
Yeah. I was shopping. I just moved I lived in Telluride for a few years, and I was wandering. I spent like the first 10 years of my 20s kind of wandering around. I was one of those vagabond kind of kids, backpacking and traveling. And I was like, I need to settle down and get a career going. And then I moved to Seattle because I figured I'd go to school up there. And I met her at Pike Place Market. She was just there selling these flowers pressed in glass, and I just made eye contact, and that was it. And then I came back and started talking to her, and she kind of brushed me off.
It was like you came back the next day?
Yeah, I had to come back the next day. She was like, and she said, she didn't say she was going to be there. She's like, I'll be there. She's like, oh, I work here once a month for my mom. I'm like, it's not going to work for me. So I went back the next day and she was there covering for someone. So I was lucky. And then we chat. I almost ran over with my bike. I was riding my bike looking for her. And true story. And she just, we just started talking. And then, we exchanged numbers. And then she called me that night and asked me out on a date.
Wow, she asked you out on a date.
Asked me on a date. My wife is, everyone thinks when they meet her, she's like, she's more the quiet. My wife is she's very inspiring, very driven, she's very active human being. She's a very inspiring person. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
This is just my mind working the way it does. How small of a window that is. Like if let's say she didn't cover that next day.
We'll get to know each other over time, I guess, but I would go down every day.
Yeah.
I'm persistent. I'm persistent. So there's a certain amount of that. Yes,
so there's a good answer to it.
I lucked out. But I would have gone every day.
So she left that big of an impression.
For a year, maybe.
Gotcha.
Yeah. When you know.
What a line too, bro. Whether you mean it or not. That was a beautiful thing to say.
Yeah.
I would have gone every day of my life for even if it took a year to make sure I found you again.
Actually, when you know me, I actually would do that.
Persistence.
Yeah. When you know, I think.
Yeah.
That's awesome. When you know. Fantastic. So one of the things we were talking about off camera too that I wanted you to cover is, and I've had some friends ask, and Meredith has, if you're not in the state of Arizona or within driving distance or whatever of your Protea, how do people find a practitioner that they can put their faith and confidence in like we put in you guys?
It's so hard.
It is. Apparently, it's almost impossible.
Yeah, it is. I have patients who fly in from around the country, and it's not easy to treat them because they're not there, and it's difficult, but it's the best we can do. There are questions you should ask your doctor. One, you should have your doctor care about you, and you should know that they care about you when you walk in the room, and that's not a common thing. That's one. And then two, your doctor should run lab work based upon what your symptoms are. And they shouldn't blow off your symptoms and say, that's just what it means to be a woman, or that's just, you're getting older as a guy.
Yeah, you're 45. Yeah.
They should be willing to run labs that show whether you're healthy or not healthy. And then they should go over your lab work line by line. And I believe in, I know this sounds weird to say as a doctor, but I believe in capitalism in a lot of ways because, when the need arises, there'll be a market for it. And I think that as more people become educated that they don't have to live this way. Like just right now, the average sperm count in men has plummeted. Like we're a fraction of what we were in the 1940s, and it keeps going down. Our fertility is going down.
Why do you suppose that is?
Plastics in the environment.
Plastics?
Yeah, no doubt. Microplastics. And that was another thing I learned that in when I first was in school. In environmental toxicology in the early 2000 we were learning about it in the food chain, and we knew it was causing frogs to be hermaphrodites. And
oh wow,
I remember Walter Crinian, he said, how much longer until this is us?
Wow.
And so we know that children are being born with boys are being, and this is published, this is not argued anymore, but the boys are being born with a anogenital distance that's more feminizing every year, and this has to do with plastic exposure in utero.
Really?
In the hospital, yeah. So you're having this thing where men are being born, with lower and lower levels of androgens in utero. Now, so a healthy testosterone in a man, 900. Let's just say what it is the total testosterone should be around 900. That's a good level for a guy. When you're in the womb, your blood hits 900. Those first trimesters.
Wow, no way.
It's true.
Really?
And then you're born, and that first year, you probably hit around 600-700.
Really?
This is in school books. This is textbook. Wow. This is not alternative. This is not out there. And I promise you, whenever I say something alternative, I will put a caveat. This is pretty alternative. We're still figuring this part out, but this part is figured out.
Did you say this was testosterone?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Wow.
And so then when you have a man presenting to clinic at 25, 30 years old with a total testosterone at 200, what's wrong? How did that happen?
Yeah.
And why is it there?
Right.
And then they think, well, the advertising, the thought process is just, they're not going to be able to have erections and they're not going to build muscle mass. That's all they think about it as. But it's testosterone's impact on your brain is just well documented, well understood. I mean, for anxiety alone, testosterone plays a huge role.
For anxiety?
Yeah.
I'm getting tested tomorrow.
Yeah.
Dude, it changes the way you think. Like, not necessarily the way you think. It changes the assertiveness of my thoughts. I think would be the right way to say that.
Yeah.
The assertive. I have my killer instinct back. I got like the alpha part of me that drives me and that I created things with. It's back. I lost it. And it was hard. It was stressful. You were saying one of the reasons for my physiologic stress markers was because I'm trying to be somebody that my body's not supporting me to be anymore, based on who I am and how I foundationally built my body and my brain, but I don't have the support from the inside any longer to maintain what I'm trying to do with the outside.
This is gender identity.
Yeah.
You're in the womb. This is what you're supposed to be. This is your biology. And then when you're out and then all of a sudden it starts to fail, you don't feel right.
Yeah.
You're not you anymore.
And one thing that was interesting too, you mentioned sexual performance. I didn't really think ever that I had an issue with sexual performance. The funniest thing you said, you're looking at blood, you're like, well, there must be sure brain power because it ain't your hormones that are helping you do that, bro.
But you can compensate. There's different parts of your brain that can compensate for it. And that's why it's an epidemic if you run the labs. People are like, well, why aren't there all these men falling apart? You can modulate. There's so many redundancies in the body. So if a man has low testosterone, that doesn't mean he's going, like there's all these studies that show with a man with his testosterone, the Journal of American Medical Association published, I'm going to say this number off the top of my head, I might be wrong, but a man whose testosterone is below 450 has a higher incidence of type 2 diabetes. That's true. That's a given. And that might be 500 or 400, but let's say 450, I believe it was. And if you have a guy who comes in, it's 300. Does that mean he's going to get diabetes? No. If he's eating right, he's good, he probably won't. But still, there's a higher chance of having that. So if you're taking care of yourself and you have a loving relationship and she's your connection and there's this intimacy and all that, you'll still be able to have a libido. You'll still be able to have erectile function. These things will work all right, but it's not optimal.
Right.
And we're using compensatory parts of the brain when you're supposed to have this. This is who you are. It's what you're made to be.
Yeah.
Is testosterone a big part of fat burning or anything like that?
Part of it.
Part of it?
Part of it.
Gotcha.
Multi-layers to it. Fat burning is a lot of it's stress. The low testosterone leading to high stress. The bump up you see in insulin from that high insulin.
So a combination deal. Mm-hmm. Gotcha.
Yeah. It's a few things.
Yeah.
You mentioned environmental poisoning and toxins that way. We had discussed one of the primary causes was Starbucks cups.
Oh yeah, who knew?
Right.
Wait, what's that?
Starbucks cups or plastic cups that you put hot. What can you explain the mechanism of that?
So we have patients come in and we look at certain labs, and one of the labs we use, which is still this is controversial what I'm about to say. So here I got a controversial thing to throw out. There's three different types of estrogen in the human body: estriol, estradiol, and estrone. Estrone is a spent version of estrogen, and you're not supposed to have very much of it. It doesn't have very much estrogen-like effect. It's the step the body takes before it's going to get rid of it. But that is an inflammatory estrogen. Estrone, when it's really elevated in women, that's going to cause breast cancer. It's definitely linked to it. Not always primary cause, but it's linked to it very strongly. It's also linked to venous thromboembolic events. We throw clots, strokes.
My mom has the BRCA gene, estrogen positive.
Yeah, so that's more going to be estradiol. But if you have estrone with that, not good.
Oh, okay.
Not good.
Gotcha.
So oral birth control ramps up estrone in women big time. And that's why you see clot risks.
So she has like zero estrogen. Mm-hmm. And I don't know. I think she was saying she can't take.
She can't.
She can't. Mm-hmm. That's right. Okay.
So in those cases, I work with oncologists, and then there are other things we can do in those settings. I have a lot of close relationships with oncologists on how to treat those people with hormones. And it's important that we follow their guidelines because it's a good teamwork. I really cherish my relationships with those oncologists when we treat women with those risks.
Because women need estrogen, don't they?
There are ways you can work around it with redundancies with other hormones.
Oh.
So you don't have to give them estrogen because you can't give them estrogen, but you can do other things around it.
So you just level up another hormone?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Kind of.
Kind
Depends.
of. I'm taking this information from my mom.
Yeah.
Who is a huge fan of the show,
plastic.
by the way.
Yes, she is. She loves the show.
So we have plastics in the environment. So plastic, and I've been reading more research. Plastics, when you consume, and we all know it's now more like people consume the weight of a credit card a week in plastics. Yeah, and it's in our food chain now. It's in the meat, but like we see it, estrogen becomes elevated. In my experience, estrogen becomes hyper elevated in people who are eating more plastic or getting higher levels of plastic. There's some studies, there's some points that are seen in the research where plastics cross-react to the estrogen testing kit that they use at the lab. So you're actually getting an indirect reading of plastic that way. So it's a false elevation on the estrogen. So
we just skipped past the statement that you guys just said and just let it fly. We eat what? The size of a plastic credit card?
Yeah.
How often?
A week.
A week?
There's not much plastic infused.
Some people
in our
are way
foods.
worse. Yeah, some people are worse. But I've gotten people to be down. I love that. That's another
so technically, I could eat a plastic credit card, and that's what I'm consuming a week.
Depending on your lab work and depending on what you're eating, yeah.
Depends on where you're eating and how they're eating, and how they prepare it.
Yeah.
Anything warmed up in plastic or anything like if a plastic water bottle sits in a warehouse in July in Phoenix before it gets distributed and it's over and it gets over 120 degrees. There you go. That it's going to leach plastics into the water, and that's the same point 120 degrees. So if you have a plastic cup or a Keurig or something, we want to name brand. We're not trying to bash brands here, but like if you have a plastic cup that you make your coffee with or drink your coffee through,
or a paper cup. So now lined. Paper cups, all white paper cups, unless told otherwise, is lined with plastic. They make them. There's a vegetable starch they can use instead. That's biodegradable. It's a tiny bit more expensive. You buy those different. It's different when you use those. You can also get plastic cups that look like plastic cups, but they're made with plant starch. This is a new technology, and this is like, people get so upset talking about these things. They're like, that's not a big deal. Plastic environment. This is just garbage. It's not true. It's just, people can believe what they want, but the facts are the facts. And it's not expensive to use those different types of plastic cups instead that are not made with plastic, they're made from plant-based. But back to you, and I want to make sure I'm really clear on this because people will hear this and freak out.
Yeah.
Our ancestors grew up around volcanoes. They ate food that was bacteria laden. The heavy metals coming out of those volcanoes was serious.
Yeah.
There was water that was never clean. We can tolerate a profound amount of insult and be fine.
Yeah.
So getting some plastic in you, it won't kill you. With that said, lab work and being careful. That doesn't mean not caring or being hyper careful. It means, figure out where you are on the scale. Yeah. And it's always better to move more in that direction. But like, I'm here. I'm drinking this. Am I really worried? No. The rest of my life is good. My labs are good. I'm good.
Yeah.
But, am I going to do this every day? No. But that's,
Still crazy. I didn't know that. Just the whole credit card thing just kind of blew my mind.
It's getting in the general news. It's being released more and more.
Yeah.
I don't know if you saw that study that more men are being born with micro penis and, intersex. And you see that's a huge epidemic.
I saw a video on that like yesterday.
That's just due to lack of it. And now they're not being born with that 900 level of testosterone throughout the pregnancy and the first year of development. They're not getting that 600 level, which then goes dormant until puberty and then climbs back up. But that's not happening.
The guy was talking about all the things that are in the baby food that's being sold in stores that is causing like a shrinkage of genitalia, stuff like that. It's crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
It is.
What you eat matters.
It does.
Yeah, seriously.
It's kind of hard with babies. You're kind of limited on what you can feed them, right?
Yeah. It's really hard.
Yeah, especially with the food
baby food shortage, formula shortage. I know. It's been. I feel for them. I really do.
Coming back to your sperm count thing, Elon Musk was just on the Nelk podcast, and he was talking about how we actually are underpopulated right now. When they're trying to say that we're overpopulated, but we're actually having an issue with underpopulation because we're not having as many babies or anything. I didn't know if that was something to do with less sperm count than what we used to have, I guess.
Well, you're having less reproduction. Less people are having kids, and they're waiting and they're not having a good sperm count. They're having more health problems around the kids.
Yeah. Because he was saying in the 70s, I think it was right after the war, everyone just the huge baby boom. Mm-hmm. And now
that's normal though. Yeah. We're about to have another baby boom. I mean, remember that baby boom came after World War II and there's a period of plenty. Yep. There was also a micro baby boom that happened after the Spanish flu in the 1917, I think it was 16, 17, 18. We're going to probably go through another one now. I mean, one of the doctors I work with just went to like 4 weddings in a row.
Oh.
Yeah, this is what happens after these types of crises. You'll have a birth uptick, and I'm sure that'll happen.
COVID
but I think
babies.
Food. I think the thing we worry about is food supply. Gotcha. This is off my. This is
It's all
good. But it's food supply relative to population should be our biggest concerns.
Which is a huge concern right now with what's going on in Ukraine and the world grain supply.
Yeah.
Right. And they're already having, supply chain issues, baby formula and other things. The anesthesiologists I work with, they're with all the ketamine being used and psychotherapy now for depression and anxiety. They're using all those precursors to make that type of ketamine versus like the medical grade general anesthetic ketamine. Yeah. So they're having to, from all levels right now, we're facing shortages all the way from what we eat to how we get treated medically.
Which is great for market. I mean, it's terrible in the moment for health and for wellness, those things. But I think those things create demand. Going back to earlier, like with your health, there's not a lot of doctors who do this kind of work. Just like we're running out of certain foods or we're running out of certain medications, it's an opportunity in a capitalist environment.
Absolutely.
For people to say this is, and I mean, capitalism gets vilified. I know. But I mean, I operate in a capitalist, I'm a cash-based practice, and an office visit with me is about what it costs for a woman to color her hair, which is not a lot of money.
Right.
I see them twice a year maybe, and so I think if you look at it through the lens that capitalism is not always a bad thing.
The invisible hand in the marketplace.
And people will, so if there's more people who want this kind of care, it's not, and I'm not here to talk about my practice because that's not good. That's very short-sighted of me as a person.
Sure.
It's more important to create the need in the people, pointing out the need that they have they didn't realize they had.
Right.
And the
they
benefit
create the
of it.
demand societally.
They will create that.
And then society will create the solution.
Because I didn't invent this.
Right.
I did not invent what I do. I am not magic. There's nothing special about me. I'll be honest with you. There's nothing. So I did not invent progesterone.
Well, you are a damn genius, bro. I mean, come on.
No, but I'm just really being honest. You know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? I'm not going to sit here and say the only way to get well is through me because that's just ridiculous.
No, yeah,
but that's a problem in medicine.
Right.
You'll have a lot of these doctors in alternative medicine. That's how they roll.
Yeah.
That's how they roll. That's their business model, but it's short-sighted.
Yeah.
There's only so many patients you can see.
Right.
And it's more important, in my opinion, to create demand as wide as you can. Like Johnny Appleseed, that stuff, throw it out everywhere and get people to want it. And then doctors see demand, they get fed up of working and seeing 20 patients, 30 patients a day because, man, that would drive me out of my mind.
Right.
And they're like, I could do this. There's plenty of ways to learn how to do this. And again, I didn't invent this. There's ways of learning how to do it, and you just start doing it, and it's rewarding. Like I said, I love my job, man. Yeah.
That's what we're doing today, bro. We're getting the good word out. Hey, I wanted to talk about, before we wrap up, estrogen in men. I know estrogen has been vilified as like, I know bodybuilders, they take, estrogen blockers, those that are non-natural, right? And are taking performance enhancers. A lot of times they want to like block the estrogen, but they do it to the point where it's too much.
Yeah.
And that can affect sexual performance, which I didn't realize, and you taught me, that they can have, like, those bodybuilders who look great in the gym may not be able to take care of things in the bedroom.
Not at all. I learned that the hard way.
Wait, do you want to explain that?
I had a guy, and he was a specimen. This guy was a specimen. He was a trainer at a big box gym. He was just one of those, well-known trainer guys in this box gym. And I'm nothing against box gyms. I go to a box gym. I love my box gym. But he really, at the end of the day, he was like, I can't have an erection. I mean, I look like this. She's beautiful. Look at me. Look at this. I have this whole thing going on, specimen thing with me and my girl, and I can't get an erection. I don't even want to have sex. I can't ejaculate. He was abusing hormones without telling me.
Jeez.
Gotcha.
And one of the hormones he was abusing was anastrozole. You only treat what's needed to be treated. And you treat it as little as you can in order to get the best results. In other words, don't use a heavy hand and use lab work and always have someone else doing it too. Like if I were to do my own hormones, I would kill myself. You know what I mean? I shouldn't do my own self-care. Just like bodybuilders who abuse hormones should not do that because they are killing themselves. I mean, look how many of them died, right?
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's like, estrogen, it's Goldilocks. Estradiol in men, libido, erections, totally valid. But even more importantly, when you lift, say you're going out, you're going to start lifting, so you're going to start taking testosterone. But say you take too much anastrozole, you block your estrogen too much, and you're lifting, you're building muscle. The muscle attaches to bone. That's how it works. That's how it pulls the bone, right? That's the power of it. And so if that tendon attachment to the bone is weak, you're going to pull that tendon. And you're going to have avulsion, you're going to have a tendinopathy, all these things. That comes from low estrogen because estrogen mediates that attachment of tendon to bone. And so you'll have more joint and bone pain. Other things estrogen plays a role, brain chemistry and mood. It plays a role with HDL cholesterol, protective cholesterol. It's a part of us. It's a part of our landscape.
Is that why you see more torn injuries with high profile athletes?
Sometimes. There's also corticosteroids. If they're doing corticosteroids like high levels of prednisone or injectable steroids, anti-inflammatory corticosteroid.
I see like bodybuilders like torn biceps.
So I had a friend that tore his bicep, and he blamed it on taking an anabolic. So was it the steroid or was it the
both?
It could have both.
Because you build the muscle up so fast, but the tendon isn't attached very well.
Right.
And if you block your estrogen so much, you just call it a day. You're going to tear it.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
You're asking for trouble every time.
Wow.
Balance is everything. Balance is everything. And, getting a man to testosterone of 900 optimal, getting his estrogen, 20 to 25, 30 even, that's it. That's all they need.
What's an estrogen level good for a female?
It varies. Depends on where they're in their life.
Oh, gotcha.
But for bone density, should be around above 82.
Oh, okay.
But some women are very feminine, and that's good and beautiful. Just like his testosterone probably closer to like 1100 is good, right? 900 is like an average for us.
Naturally.
Yeah. So some men are very masculine, some women are very feminine, and you have different types. You have and I don't know if I could say Harrison Ford back in the day. That guy 1100. I mean, just look at him. You know what I mean? He's just, I know he's not a big bodybuilding guy, but you look at his face, his masculinity. Guy's a man, right? He's a dude. Yeah. And then look at Justin Timberlake.
So we talking about Indiana Jones was 1100?
Yeah. Okay. Justin Timberlake. Nothing wrong with him. He's probably better off at 700. You can see the phenotype, the body type. So men have that variable too in the healthy range, and that's fine and good. Gotcha. Women also. So some women are really feminine, and they're supposed to be high. But when women are really high, you got to give them progesterone and testosterone to offset that excessive level of estrogen in their body. Gotcha. They're supposed to have that too.
Okay. Yeah. I just didn't know personally, even the numbers, like testosterone. I didn't know 900 was kind of a base.
Now you know. And the reference range in labs now are being more based upon the averages in America. So testosterone in men, some lab companies has around 1100 is the top end and 250 is the bottom end. They've lowered it down. At one point I saw 750 to 90 for men. Wow. And that's not based on what's healthy. It's based upon what's average now. And estrone, which is the one that's more associated with pathology, it used to be for men 0 to 72. LabCorp just bumped that reference range to 0 to 168. I think it's 168.
Based on averages.
No reason other than that.
Based on averages, not based on what's best health outcomes. Based on median
capricious
averages. Wow.
Just learning these things, I don't understand why we weren't taught these things growing up. I felt like that should have been a thing in school that I learned.
We're still figuring out. Yeah. This whole epidemic of low testosterone still hasn't been fully accepted by the medical establishment. It's getting there. Yeah. I think in the next 10 years, you're going to see it becoming a really understood thing. And the environment has impacted us so negatively for reproduction and for just, our health, our wellness, and the benefit these hormones play in that. And the need to do it safely with lab work and verified with consistent, care. It has to be under supervision always, medical supervision, carefully.
Yeah.
I was going to ask, obviously there's always side effects, right? Are there risks associated with, I'd heard a doctor criticizing somebody who was doing hormone therapy. He was a Western trained medical doctor, because he told her that she was going to develop heart disease.
Yeah. Yes.
So what can you talk about that? Like what
Yep.
is what is it?
100%. This is really frustrating because it's true and it's not true. If you give a woman oral estrogen, you run a higher risk for deep vein thrombosis and breast cancer because oral estrogen gets converted to estrone in the liver really fast. And you see elevations of estrone in those women. So when a doctor says by taking that estrogen, you're going to have a heart attack or you're going to end up having a stroke or you're going to end up having breast cancer, orally, yes, that is a risk and that is a concern. If you do synthetic estrogen, yeah, you're going to get breast cancer at a higher rate. Absolutely. Synthetic estrogen, it's not even bioidentical. We didn't even get it bioidentical in this conversation. It's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
So there's synthetic versions of these hormones that are dangerous. So when a doctor says you're doing hormone replacement therapy is going to kill you, yes, it will, because you're using synthetics. There's a synthetic version of progesterone called medroxyprogesterone acetate, or MPA, and that is definitely associated with breast cancer. We use it in birth control. It is not a good thing for women to have. So it is proven to lead to breast cancer. That's why you can't be on it for very long. You don't be on it during these years of reproduction. And it even says it on the sheet you fill out, yeah, you get breast cancer with this.
Right.
So when a doctor says that, it's part of the truth, but it's not the truth. When you come in and I test you and you are low in testosterone, I give you bioidentical natural testosterone within a normal physiological range that is verified as being healthy and safe. And then we run all the labs associated with downstream metabolites. Make sure it's not doing anything bad with you. Are you making too many red blood cells? Are you making too much estrogen? What are we doing with this testosterone? Make sure it's safe. If you're doing that, you're fine. The way you get it into someone's body is one thing, and then the dose you do and the type of hormone you do are the others. And once you have all those three lined up, you're fine. But when done wrong, yeah, it's unsafe. It's just they vilify it and make it seem like blanket statement, it's all bad.
Throw the whole baby out with the bathwater.
Yes. I can't tell you how many women I have given progesterone to in my career. Oral micronized progesterone, which is bioidentical natural progesterone. This is really important. And you'll do a mammogram on those women before and a mammogram 6 months later. And their breast cancer risk factors, lifetime risk factors, breast cancer, every single time goes down. I challenge someone to prove me wrong on that.
Wow.
Every single time I've ever done it, I've always seen it go down using oral micronized progesterone, which is a bioidentical natural progesterone, which inhibits estrogen stimulation of that glandular tissue. Synthetic progesterone, other way around, increases that risk every single time. So when a doctor tells his patient, your progesterone is going to cause you breast cancer, is he talking about oral micronized progesterone or the synthetic medroxyprogesterone acetate? You know, I know the names are confusing. Yeah. To me, it's like, I know what I'm talking. I know it because I deal with it every day. But for a person on the street, no one tells them that.
No, in general, though, if you're going to have hormone therapy, you want to make sure you're doing bioidentical hormones.
Bioidentical hormones, and you're running your labs to verify you're within the correct ranges, and you live longer. You don't live shorter, you live longer doing these things. And the research is so overwhelming with that. But the research is also overwhelming that synthetics and poor delivery mechanisms will kill you. Look at bodybuilders.
Yeah.
They don't live long.
That's one of the deadly, the quiet secrets, I think, of that sport is how many of them die. You know,
sadly,
through the extreme methods they do with training, hormones. Yeah. Also, then when they're doing prep and they're cutting and they're extreme dehydration and they're taking diuretics, and
I had a friend that had
it's a physiologic hurricane.
Yeah.
You know? You look healthy. You know, to a certain extent, you look healthy. And sometimes when you look unhealthy, you're actually not so unhealthy.
Right? The last podcast we were talking about skinny fat.
Yeah.
It's like you look great, but your body's mostly fat. There's no muscle in your body. You don't feel healthy, or you get more body pain, more body aches. It really is. The body's not always, you look good, but you know what's going on in the hood.
Right. Yeah, exactly. That's a good point. That's I like the car analogy. I can relate to that a lot.
Yeah.
Last thing I want to talk to you is, one of the main reasons I started this podcast and my main driving forces behind it was the mental health of my profession and medicine and medical healthcare providers in general. I've had multiple friends closely that have been severely affected by mental health outcomes. And I wondered, how do you maintain your mental health? What do you do to make sure that you can, because I think that's something you and I have both kind of gone through fairly recently. Not without getting too personal.
I'll get personal.
I mean, you can get personal. I don't want to get personal for you. That's what I'm saying.
I'm open. Because I think it's important to be open. Yeah, go ahead.
So how do we, what do you do? Like, how do you maintain your brain? Like, what do you have a mental health routine? Do you have a daily routine that helps you stay on track? Is it the passion of your practice? How do you maintain a positive mental outlook practicing medicine?
Celeste last podcast alluded to, we had a son who was born when I was in medical school with some severe health risks. He wasn't going to live. And that stress in medical school was brutal because we were broke, and I had an acupuncture degree because I did that, and I was going to become a naturopath, so I was going to do a combined degree. So I started practicing acupuncture so I could stay in school and Celeste could stay home with my son. And, starting an acupuncture practice, it's not, make money doing that right off the bat. That doesn't work. But it did, and I made it work.
We were in the right area for it.
Yeah. Well, we were in Tempe.
Oh, I thought you were in Seattle. Oh, you did your.
I've been my naturopath here. I get my acupuncture in Hawaii.
Gotcha.
Flew here, practice acupuncture here. So I had to work with my son who was in the hospital. He had a nasogastric feeding tube for a year. Then my daughter was born with something similar. And we dealt with autism in our family. I've gone through more stress, I think, than not. Everyone has their stressors. I've gone through a lot, and trauma, and it affects you as a person. And I wasn't able to get past a certain point in my life because I would have so much static, so much self-defeating things would happen to me because I had so many bad things that had happened. And in order to keep my family going, I was full-time medical school, but I was also working full-time. And then, it was rough.
Wow.
So what?
When did you sleep?
I broke when I was 42. I finally broke. And, I went into EMDR. I discovered EMDR therapy. My best friend's son did 2 tours in Iraq, and I watched the kid. And I watched him before and after and during it. He would come and spend a Christmas with us once. Great kid. But I just watched that. And I didn't have the same type of trauma as he did, but I had trauma. And so, through that, I learned about EMDR. And
is that the light?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so I started doing that in 2012. And, I was early in the practice, still, scraping nickels together. I think I was on food stamps till 2010 on the government cheese. It was broke. I paid that back. But it was stretched to financially afford it. But if I had to sell my car and walk to work, I would do it again. So I did EMDR for years, weekly, sometimes do double sessions or twice.
For years?
I'm still in. I'm 10 years in.
Wow, still doing it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I stopped after a while. I felt I was pretty good, handling my family well, handling my stress well. But I wasn't managing my business well. Yeah. And I still had stress. I still was, getting angry or upset or hurt or frustrated. And I was more emotional than anything. I was being triggered by things going on because you care about these people, your patients. And when you're setting up a protocol for someone, it's so important to get it right. Because you see how I feel about you. When I feel that way about my patients, then you set up a protocol and it's not being followed through correctly, and you just feel like you're failing that person. And it would really emotionally beat me up, and I would be more wrapped up in the emotion rather than the logic of like, how do I fix this? I got to fix this. But I would be so beat up, and so I went back, and I had a business consultant for my practice helping me structure it and scale it. And he was like, you got to go back into EMDR. He even told me.
No, you got to go back to that.
He didn't even know I'd done EMDR, but he's like, Brandon, you got to go to EMDR. You ever heard of it? I'm like, yeah, I've done that. We're back in. And I did that again, and I did another round. And now it's more like, I'm doing this workshop this weekend coming up called For the Daring Way from Brene Brown. It's like how to be a more open, leader with my staff, that sort of thing. So for mental health, I think it's made me a better husband, it's made me a better friend, it's made me a better doctor, better manager of the people around me, more accountable as a man. That's been my biggest work, has been, constantly in therapy. That hasn't changed. I play, around with other hobbies on the side and stuff. I have little fun things I do. I like to sail. My wife and I picked up sailing. There's a lake here in Arizona we sail at. There's little things I do on the side for fun, but that really has been the mental health thing.
That's awesome. So you go in regularly. I mean, it's a part of your.
Yeah, I'm every other week now.
Yeah.
So I like to say I'm pretty much cured. I'm almost. You notice what I say? I'm almost cured. So it's like I'm almost cured of my PTSD.
I had a therapist that did EMDR with me, and it was funny. It was kind of one of those. It was one of those things that, man, I was just exhausted afterwards too. I remember, just exhausted. You're kind of sitting there, you're like, this isn't working. It's kind of kooky, whatever.
Yeah.
And it took a year before I had a major breakthrough. But then all of a sudden it was like I could see the bricks of my brain, like inside my brain, I could see the picture of like something behind a wall. And as the bricks started crumbling off the wall, I saw this secret and I was like, oh my gosh, I'd forgotten about that.
I totally know what you're talking about.
And it was I was driving on the freaking freeway. And I was like,
where you do your best meditation.
Right. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I had forgotten about this. And I call my counselor and I tell her, and she's like, it makes sense now. It all makes sense now. And then, we're able to move forward. And then she ended up with COVID and everything. She ended up moving to Indiana. So then we didn't do any therapy for a year. And man, I was a flat wreck. We almost didn't make it through that year. And at the end of that year is when we moved into this house, and that move was really rough on us. Like just really, really rough. And I remember we were getting ready to like pack boxes and I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And I was like, actually curled up on the floor in my closet crying in a ball, dude. And like, honestly, and I was like, I don't want to feel like this anymore. I don't want to feel like this anymore. And so I looked up a phone number my good friend had given me to his counselor, and I called him and I was like, and I called him and his wife answered, and I said, I need to come in. And she said, what's going on? And I kind of told her, she goes, we can get you in tonight.
That's what you deserve.
Yeah. It was amazing.
Healthcare providers like that.
Yeah.
Is what we need.
Yeah. It was amazing. And I asked her, I was like, hey, Jeff really doesn't work that late normally, does he? She's like, no, but I knew you needed to come in.
That's what you need.
Yeah. And it's been great. I started going once a week for a long time. And now I'm on, depends on how snarky I get,
It's a good measure, isn't it?
Right. That's kind of a measure.
It's a good measure.
Like start feeling like, I don't realize you're angrier more often, but yeah, I usually once a month, but then right now we're kind of going, Meredith started going with me and we've been going every other week kind of ish, just depending on how things have been going. But I think it's important, man, to have those mental reps, those mental therapies. Like, I feel like this has been so stigmatized for so long. And it's just like, we didn't talk about this in the last podcast. I should have with JD, I forgot, but like with Dak Prescott, he came out and he talked about how he has like crippling anxiety, and he got a lot of criticism for saying that. And that, like, to me, it made me endearment to him, because he was like, they were saying, hey, you're the leader of the team, and the team's gonna take their cues from you. How you can't come out and tell them you got anxiety. And he was like, how many of those players have anxiety too? And now if I talk about how I overcome it, I can help them overcome it.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
That's the movement, right? Not the whole let's shun it and let's shun being real and let's pretend everything's perfect movement that we can't live through. We realize that.
Yeah.
We try to do that as a society.
Life is way more dynamic than that.
Right.
It's way more dynamic than that.
But to me, that just made him think that is a leader I would follow on the football field, because he's honest.
Yeah.
And he's real.
Yeah.
And he's doing what I'm doing too. But he's honest. He's being willing to be honest about his struggles with it. And I thought, man, I might have to actually become a Cowboys fan.
Let's not go that far.
Never. You can be my support network on that. Well, Dr. McCarthy, it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
It's an honor. Thank
you. Loved having you here. I know this has been a valuable content for our audience, and I really appreciate Celeste being here as well. You're not necessarily on camera right now, but you're off in the shadows. But we really appreciate this. It's been life-changing for us. I will just tell you guys listening, it matters. It matters. Find a doctor you can trust. Get your blood work done. Look at your entire body systems, from your thyroid all the way through your body. Make sure your body's looking at every system and talking about it and reviewing it with you. And if they're not, how do they really know how healthy you are? And how do they really know that the things they're prescribing for you are really having the effect that they think they're having, unless they're actually testing it, seeing it for themselves? So with that in mind, I'd like to wrap the show up. Thank you very much. Don't forget to clickety-click, like, share, subscribe. We will see you again on another amazing episode of The Value Script.